All right, welcome back, NAU Jazz Festival 2021. We're glad to have a great bunch of masterclasses by both our guest artists and our faculty members over the next 2 days. Pleased to introduce Brice Winston, coming to us from Tucson Jazz Institute and the U of A. I'm really glad to have him here for this improvisation masterclass. You'll hear from a bunch of students here from the NAU Jazz Studies program, and please enjoy from your home. Let's hear for Brice.
All right, welcome. We're going to get started with just doing some playing. I want to hear where all of they are playing, where they are at in their development, and talk about some things maybe they already know that you may not be aware of. We'll talk about some things generally, and then maybe get into some specifics. And we all found some common ground on the standard, There Will Never Be Another You. So, let's see, why don't you take the first half of the melody?
Okay.
Why don't you take the second half of the melody? Okay. And then why don't you take the first solo, and we'll pass around solos. I'll just kind of point fingers, and we'll just take solos from there. Cool? All right, here we go, from the top. Is this an okay tempo for everybody? All right, here we go. There will never be another you. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. kind of a reinforcement on some things for you guys as well. So, a huge part of this, of learning how to play, learning how to improvise, playing jazz, is having a model of what we want to sound like, right? And shooting for that ideal, shooting for that model, trying to imitate, emulate someone that is a master of this music, right? So can each of you tell me quickly, who is your model? Who is your person you're trying to sound like?
I really like Sonny Rollins and John Coltrane.
Great.
It's a really tough question on the spot. I would say I like Wayne Bergeron a lot, and for more improv-related stuff, Miles Davis.
For alto, mainly Sonny Stick, but I listen to a lot of Cannibal Adderley.
Great.
J.J. Johnson.
Cool.
Probably Keith Jarrett.
Wow.
Probably Larry Grenadier.
Nice.
And I've been listening to a lot of Buddy Rich.
Okay, cool. Okay, everybody that you guys mentioned are great jazz musicians, worthy of copying, right? And the biggest compliment we can give to those people is to acquire their information, take their information exactly as they're playing it, understand what it is they're playing, and use it. That is a huge compliment to them, because you're saying, I love what you do, I want to sound like you. So you want to make sure that you do it to the extent of what I just talked about, right? You want to learn exactly what they play, all the inflections, how they play it, the way they have their vibrato, the way they have inflections to the notes, their articulation, their phrasing, the way that they swing, all the different feels and all the different aspects, their sound, right? Their sound is like the first thing that we hear. It doesn't take, even a second to hear pretty much every single player that we just talked about. You can hear it for a second, you know who it is, right? They all have these identifiable sounds. And you guys can have that too eventually. That's the biggest thing here that I want to impress upon our audience and to y'all as well, is we need to have someone that we are trying to sound like at this point. Just like when we first started talking, you guys have probably heard this a million times, right? Learning to improvise is like learning how to talk. When we were kids, we just listened to all the people around us, and they were the masters of this language. They could speak English or whatever language you speak. We just listened to them and we imitated, but we still sound like ourselves. So we shouldn't be afraid of imitating all these people on records. You're not going to be able to sound exactly like them. And you're not just listening to one person. As you listen to all these different people, you imitate what they're doing, eventually you will sound like yourself if you understand that information. Okay, so that's the biggest thing. We need to aspire to that. Number 2, we need to get into some of the details of chords and chord scale relationships, that kind of thing, right? So let's talk about chords first, and let's talk about chord permutations. Can anybody tell me what I mean when I say chord permutations? What does that mean?
Variations of the same chord, or like I don't know, like adding extensions or stuff that's implied.
Okay, I'm talking about mostly just 1, 3, 5, and 7 of any chord symbol, not even getting into the extensions yet. So what do I mean with?
So, like different ways to order them when you're playing them?
Not inversions. I'm just talking about different qualities of the chords.
Okay.
So making sure that we can just spell the qualities of the chords. 5 basic types of chords. We're talking about major 7, dominant 7, minor 7, minor 7 flat 5, and diminished, right? There's other more complex chords beyond that, but these are the basics. And we cover all of those chords in this particular tune, except for a diminished chord. I don't think there's a diminished chord in this tune, right? But I think all of the other qualities are in here. We definitely have major, definitely have dominant, we definitely have minor, and minor 7 flat 5, right? Okay, So, first of all, why is that important? Why do we care about being able to spell those chords?
Because that's how we make decisions when we're improvising.
What do you mean?
Like, I'm not gonna play something from like C major over a minor 7 flat 5 chord, because that would sound weird in most cases.
Right. So the basic rule here is, young improvisers, is we play the sounds of chords by playing chord tones on downbeats. I'll say it again. We play the sounds of chords by playing chord tones on downbeats. So if you're only playing chord tones, you can't go wrong, even if they're on upbeats. We can play a really credible and good solo with just chord tones, right? Can't go wrong. So I want to make sure that we all understand there's an exercise that we can do just playing all of those chord tones. I think maybe I've gone over it with somebody before. Do you remember that? You want to try it? Do you want to show us the 5 different types? Let's deal with an easy key, and let's do C for you, and play C major 7. Go for it. Cool, dominant. Good. What did you do to change that?
Flat 7.
Cool. Next.
And then minor, C minor.
Well, let me ask you this first. I'm going to back up because we're skipping over a little bit of information. First of all, how did you know how to play a C major 7? What is that based on?
It's a major triad and a major 7 in the key of C.
So let's do this. I'm going to back up and I'm going to say, let's play your C major scale. Cool. And so we take the 1, the 3, the 5, and the 7 from that scale, and that makes our major 7 chord. One more time, C major 7. Cool. Now with each of these, we're going to make a 1-note adjustment, and it changes the sound of the chord. So I asked her to play dominant 7 next, and we flatted the 7. Here's our C7, C dominant 7. Cool. Next is C minor 7. What do we do?
Then we flat the 3.
Cool. This is C minor 7. Awesome. Next is C half diminished, and this also has another name, minor 7 flat 5. C minor 7 flat 5 or C half diminished. Excellent. Yep. So we didn't explain what we changed. What we added there is we flatted the 5, which is in the name of the chord, right? C minor 7 flat 5 tells you what to do, right? One more time. C minor 7 flat 5. Excellent. And diminished. What do we need to do?
And then diminished is double flat 7.
Excellent. Cool. So those are your 5 basic chord types. And a great exercise to do is to play these around the circle of fourths. If you're not sure what the circle of fourths is, if you know your major scales, a fourth is the distance from the first note of the scale to the 4th note of the scale. So if you know all your major scales, you can play, for instance, on C, C, D, E, F. F would be your next key. And so if you played your F major scale then, F, G, A, B flat would be your next key, and so on and so forth, all around the circle of fourths. Why do we care about fourths in jazz? Why is that an important interval?
Because that's what 2-5-1s are based around.
Awesome, I love it, yes. So much of jazz is focused on this this interval of the fourth, and the 2-5-1 progression, which we have several of in this tune, is a one of the most common progressions in jazz. 2-5-1. We can explain that another time. Okay, so if you take this in one key, you play all of those chord permutations in the key of C, then you move through the circle of fourths and do it in F, in B flat, E flat, A flat, etc., etc. So if you do this every day for a couple weeks, you will reliably be able to go through this exercise. We want to be able to see a chord symbol and get to those notes like yesterday, right? Because just being able to spell the chord isn't the music. Now we need to organize those notes into music and play it. So if our listeners are not aware of the app iReal Pro, I'll say it again, iReal Pro. This is a downloadable app for smartphone or for iPad. I think you can even get it for a computer. The advantage of the app iReal Pro is you download, I think it's something like 1,300 standard tunes in the jazz repertoire, and it allows you to repeat as many times as you want. It plays all of the music for you. There's a bass player, drummer, and a piano player that play all of the backing tracks for those standards, and you can practice all of the things that we are talking about today. Very, very helpful. You can change the key, you can change the tempo, and you can repeat, I think, up to 30 times and then start it over and do it another 30 times. So it's a really, really helpful app for those of you who aren't aware of it. Let's see, where was I going with that? Oh, so we were talking about chord tone solos, right? So you can practice 30 times on There Will Never Be Another You, playing your chord tone solos, being able to get to those chord tones accurately every time, right? And doing different combinations of chord tones. Can we try maybe a couple of people soloing just using chord tones and see where you can go with that? Any volunteers? Ricky, you want to go?
Sure.
Okay. So this is chord tone solo. Let's see what happens. 1, 2, 3, go. Really, really good, man. There were a couple notes outside of that. C minor, what's the third on C minor?
E flat.
Good, awesome. So, I will say you played the changes better this time than on your solo. It was more accurate, right? And so we get to decide how long do we play any chord tones. We don't even need to start on the root. We can start on the third. We can just hold a note. There's a lot of different things we can do on chord tones. Okay, so I think I've made my point with chord tones. Let's talk about some other things here. Let's talk about some things that you and I were just talking about. Let's talk about bebop scales. I want to talk about 3 different kinds of bebop scales and how we can use them, okay? Let's talk about first a major bebop scale. What is it and why do we care? Go for it.
It's a major scale with a flat 7, right? Like with an added tone that's a flat 7. So you have a passing tone?
That would be for a dominant.
That's dominant. Oh.
So major bebop scale.
Is that the added flat 6 then?
Flat 6, good. Can you demonstrate one of those?
Yeah.
Cool. And this is something that, tell me your name again? Michael. Michael and I were just doing a private session, and we were just talking about this, that bebop scales have a tendency to be played descending rather than ascending. I'm not going to say people never play ascending bebop scales, just as the language has evolved, bebop scales have tended to be descending. Have you noticed that, Russ?
Yes, sir.
Why is that?
Maybe to target the tonic at the bottom, it pays off more strongly in the low register as you descend? I don't know.
Yeah, okay. We don't have a good answer. I don't know either, but we do tend to play bebop scales descending. So this is a major scale with a flat 6 added into the scale. Why? How does it help? What does it do?
Well, the added passing tone has us have all of the chord tones on a downbeat when in a measure of 4/4. So instead of, because in a major scale you would go, and then you hit the tonic, but you're on the upbeat, the measure before, or the upbeat before the one of the next measure. And so that's not as gratifying because it's kind of lame to just like, it feels like you overshot it almost, or I guess undershot it.
Okay, good, yes. You said the key element in there, which is most important. It helps us play chord tones on downbeats. Helps us play chord tones on downbeats. If we were to play that C major scale coming straight down, let's look at what the downbeats are. Can you start on C and come down? Let's look at the downbeats. And what does that spell?
Oh, it's a D minor 7.
D minor 7. Our notes were C, A, F, and D. So if we hit those notes on the downbeat, that spells D minor 7, which is not the chord we're going for, because the chord we would play a C major bebop scale on would be a C major 7 chord. Let's make that connection. On a C major 7 chord, we would play a C major bebop scale. Right? Seems pretty logical. Okay? So whenever you see a major chord, you can play a major bebop scale in that key. So here's a cool thing. So just to reiterate, if we just play straight down a major scale, we hit the wrong tones on the downbeats. So we want to include that flat 6, which then, if you include the flat 6, let's look at our downbeats. Okay, so we had C, A, G, E, C. But wait a minute. What are the chord tones of C major 7?
C, E, G, and B?
Yeah, but we had an A in there.
Yeah,
Why did it sound okay?
because that's a C6 chord instead.
Cool. Our ears tell us that a 6 is still a major sound, right? And in fact, in a lot of early music, they didn't even include the 7 in the chord. There was a lot of 6 chords in that music, right? So that just tells us that it's a major chord. So our ear still says it's okay as to include the 6. Cool. Now let's do this. Can you play the same scale but start on the 3rd? Cool. All the same chord tones, still on the downbeats. Start on the 5th. And the 7th. Uh-oh, what happened? So now we got weird tones on downbeats, right?
Yeah.
So what do we do?
I would assume we use a different passing tone.
Good. Yeah. Or we can add a passing tone to make sure that our downbeats are still the chord tones. So what ends up happening? We play B, A flat. We don't want to be on A flat on the downbeat. We want to be on A on the downbeat, and we started with B. So what can we do?
We could use a B flat. And then
But also include the A flat.
oh,
There you
that makes sense.
go. Cool. All right. So we can start this scale on any note we want, right? The problem is if we start on any note, we need to figure out how to get on track. Because if we start on a downbeat, let's say on an F sharp or something like that, that's not a chord tone. We want to figure out how to get back on track. So you can add half steps to do that. Sometimes it needs to be an enclosure, or we go a half step below and then go back to the note, right? So these bebop scales are very, very useful for playing eighth notes through time. And playing eighth notes as we're playing with the rhythm section, it helps us feel the rhythmic feel of the tune. It helps us feel the swing. Okay? So let's get back to practicing. What do we take from this? What do we practice from this? What would you guys do, knowing this information now?
I would practice these scales at all keys.
I love it. Perfect. Yes. And I would not just practice it from the root, but I would practice it from the root, the third, the fifth, and the seventh. Because you never know which note you're going to be landing on. You want to have solutions for all kinds of different situations you find yourself in. The practicing part of this is the training, right? We get in the practice room, we practice, all these different things to get ready for various scenarios so that when we get on the bandstand, we've done our training there, and we trust what we've done in the practice room. We trust our training, and we're here playing music. We have to play music when we get on the stage, right? Okay, so we talked about major bebop scales. Let's talk about dominant bebop scales. And somebody else besides Alec want to tell me what that is? Added flat seven. Good. Can you demonstrate one?
Fancy masculine.
I know they were challenging. So it's a major scale with an added flat seven. Let's talk first. Where would we use this?
On a dominant C chord.
Dominant chord. That's correct. C7. A C7 chord, we would use a C dominant bebop scale. Again, a major scale with a flat seven. Making these connections between chords and the scales that go with them. Today we're doing a little bit more advanced than just the scale that goes along with the chord. We're doing bebop scales that go along with these chords, which have a few extra elements. Oh, side note. In iReal Pro, there's a feature which you can bring up as you're playing a particular song. As iReal Pro plays the chord, you can bring up a diagram on the bottom which shows you the scale and it shows you the chord tones. Really, really awesome tool. If you're not sure what the chord tones or the scales that go along with chords, iReal Pro can help you with that too. Very, very useful. Okay, so that's our dominant bebop. Ricky, can you play that one? This is played in your key, C7 bebop. Good. Let's talk something. I'm glad you played it that way. I want to talk about articulation for a second. When we're playing eighth notes in jazz, what should be kind of the default articulation?
Do, da, do, da.
What do you mean?
We're kind of emphasizing the offbeat.
Emphasizing the offbeat, so stressing the upbeat, right? And what else? What about that?
I'm not sure.
We want to be tonguing the offbeat, slurring to the downbeat, right? Ti, ta, he, ta, he, ta, he, ta, he. This should be your default articulation. As you get more advanced, as you learn a lot of different solos and as you play a lot of different music, there are going to be variations on this, but generally we should default to that articulation. And you'll be able to find a lot of examples of people that don't play like that. Case in point, someone like Dexter Gordon. He tongues like everything, but it still swings. He's found his own way of having an articulation that still works in the swing. But this is an important articulation, especially when we get in big band sections and we're playing eighth notes together. We want to be able to articulate together. We want to default to this initially. Cool? Can I hear that scale with that articulation?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So now what I'd like to do is make the adjustment of turning this into a flat 9 bebop scale. Does anybody want to explain what we need to do? This is new to you. You want to try it?
Yeah, you take the 9 down to a flat 9,
Yep. What's another name for the 9?
the 2,
Good. Okay, and what else?
and then you have the flat 6 as well.
Flat 6. Why? Why? Why do we have a flat 6 and a flat 9? Where does this come from?
Does it have to do with the minor scale of, I'm not really sure.
Yep, you're right on track. So this scale is derived from, how do I explain this? The harmonic minor scale of the key we would be going to. The harmonic minor scale of the key we would be going to. So let's build this up. For you, when you're playing C7, that's a 5 chord, right? Or it could be a 5 chord. What would we be going to? What would be the 1 chord?
F.
F, good. Do you know your harmonic minor scales?
Not offhand like that.
Okay, well, you're about to learn one. Here we go. So, play me your F major scale. Cool. Now play me your F major scale with a flat 3. That's a melodic minor scale.
Okay.
Don't forget that, okay? Melodic minor, major scale with a flat 3. Now we're going to add a flat 6.
Okay.
So flat 6, but major 7. So we have a minor third in there. We have this big interval leap in the middle of the scale. One more time. Excellent. Play the same scale now, starting on C. So all the same notes, just starting on C. So not C harmonic minor, F harmonic minor, but starting on C.
Okay.
So this would be a mode of harmonic minor.
Okay. So.
Play the F one, play the F harmonic minor again, and think about all the notes. So after C, you immediately go to. Play the F one again, and think about what comes after C. What came after C?
The D flat.
Bingo.
Okay.
Try it again. So C, D flat. So go back to your F harmonic minor and see what comes after the D flat.
All regular. Okay.
Yeah, make sure we can pull out your third valve slide so that that D flat will sound like a D flat. There you go. So when we get to F,
Thinking too much.
think about the first 5 notes of the F are just regular minor. It's just minor, right? Play F, the first 5 notes of F minor. Think about when you get to F, you have to play F minor. Bingo. Now play it only descending. Same notes though, don't change your notes. E natural. Good. Excellent. Now we want to add a B natural.
Okay.
Yep. Add a B natural into that. Everything else stays the same. No, think about your A flat. There it is, again. You don't have to swing it, just play it straight down. That is a flat 9 bebop scale. Flat 9 bebop scale. So, how did we get to that? Let's talk about it again. we started with the harmonic minor scale of the 1 chord, and then we backed up and went to the 5 chord, right? So the 5 chord is like starting on the 5th of our 1 chord. So we, on the F harmonic minor scale, we started on the 5th note of that, but we still played the F harmonic minor scale starting from the 5th. And then we played it descending. And the reason we had to add the B natural in there is, again, our rule. We have to play chord tones on downbeats. If we skip the B natural, we're not playing chord tones on downbeats anymore. It's essential that that B natural has to be there in this C7 flat 9 bebop scale. So, when you see a dominant flat 9, you can use your dominant flat 9 bebop scale. And this is a particular sound for a dominant flat 9. It isn't the only sound, and it's not the only scale you can use on this chord, but it is an option. It's a good option in a minor 2-5. Oh, we are running out of time, but I do want to talk briefly about 2-5-1s. Essentially, this is something you mentioned before, 2-5-1s, right? 2-5-1s, what is that? What is a 2-5-1?
It's the 2-7 chord resolving to the 5 chord, resolving to the 1 chord. It's just a set of resolutions that's really common in jazz.
Yep, that's basically it. So it's a chord based on the 2nd degree of a scale, a chord based on the 5th degree of the scale, and a chord based on the 1st degree of a major scale, right, for a major 2-5. One of the most common progressions in jazz. I think about 2-5-1s in 4 main categories. Major 2-5-1, minor 2-5-1, and then there's the long version and the short version of those, right? The long version is like a bar of the 2, a bar of the 5, resolved to the 1. A short version is 2, 5, 1, okay? So, there's all kinds of places online that you can get licks, if you will, or ideas from various places. I'll go back to what I started out with today, talking about copying what's happening on records, right? This is a really complicated thing to put together. When we're learning solos from people, we have to understand what they're doing. When you transcribe the solos, this is not something we got into the specifics of. We talked about emulating and copying solos, but we didn't talk about the specifics. What we want to do is, we did talk about learning every note, learning every inflection, everything. If you are a beginning transcriber, a beginning improviser, I highly recommend writing it down and making sure that you write the chord symbol above what they're playing. You always want to compare what are they playing to what chord is being played at that time. And you have to ask yourself a lot of questions. Why did they play what they played? How does it relate to the chord? How can I use it? Where else can I use it? So when you are learning a solo on There Will Never Be Another You, you learn all the notes, write down all the notes, you put the chords there. Oh, he plays this lick on the major chord. Guess what? You can steal that. You can take that. Like I said, it is the highest compliment to steal something from somebody. It's saying, I loved what you did. I want it for myself. I love it so much, I want it to be part of my vocabulary. So you take it, play it exactly as it is. Don't change it, right? This is something we talked about. For right now, you're acquiring vocabulary. Don't change it. Don't think you know a better way to do it yet, right? Get some vocabulary under your belt. You will be able to change and manipulate things as time goes on, as you learn what the rules are. Right now, we're learning what all these rules are, okay? Take it, understand it, see where it goes, plug it in, right? Just like back in English class, our teacher would give us like a list of words, vocabulary words. Okay, what's the definitions of these words? Okay, now write them in a sentence, right? And so I'm asking you to take these words and put them in a sentence, but not just one time, 50, 100 times. We don't really digest vocabulary until we use it over and over and over again. So, I guess we do have to finish up. I hope some of this was helpful for you all and helpful for you all. I am also available if anybody has any questions about this information, you want me to flesh anything out. Please feel free to contact me. My email address is bricewinston@gmail.com. That's BRICE Winston@gmail.com. And thank you all, and we'll see you soon.